All right, so today we're going to talk about Minor Threat. Now, this is a band that, believe it or not, was only around for 3 years. But in that short time, they left behind this legacy that's just, it's intense, it's super influential, and honestly, it's way more complicated than you'd probably think. So yeah, let's get into it. So right at the heart of their whole story is this one big question. How does a punk band, a band that was only around for 3 years and was fundamentally anti-commercial, how do they end up in a fight with one of the biggest corporations on the planet? Like a head-to-head battle with Nike, of all companies. The answer to that question, well, it tells you everything you need to know about who they were and what they stood for. Okay, so to really get this, we're actually going to start the story in a weird place. Not at the beginning, but way later, in 2005. That's more than 20 years after the band had already broken up. And trust me, this is where it all gets really, really interesting. So check this out. Nike Skateboarding decides to launch this big tour, and they call it Major Threat. For the poster, they didn't just borrow an idea from Minor Threat's famous first EP cover. They straight up ripped it off. They reshot the photo, swapped out the combat boots for a pair of Nikes, and even messed with the band's super distinct logo. Just wild. You can imagine the band was not happy. Their reaction was immediate. The singer, MacKaye, put out a statement just blasting Nike's actions. But what's really amazing is what happened next. The band's fans, and these are some of the most loyal fans you'll ever see, they got fired up by the band's label Dischord Records and started this massive letter-writing campaign. They just flooded Nike with protests. And here's the crazy part. It actually worked. Nike completely caved. They issued a formal apology and had to destroy all their Major Threat stuff. Think about that for a second. This small, long-gone punk band just took on a global giant and won. Which, of course, just makes you wonder, how in the world did they build that kind of die-hard loyalty in the first place?
Well, to answer that, we gotta rewind, way back to where it all started, the Washington, D.C. punk scene in 1980.
What's just incredible is how fast this all happened. In 1980, MacKaye and Jeff Nelson's first band, the Teen Idols, breaks up. They take the money they'd saved up, start their own label, Dischord Records, grab a guitarist, Lyle Pressler, and a bassist, Brian Baker, and bam, by December of that same year, Minor Threat is already playing its first gig. It's just a whirlwind. And this whole thing was powered by one core idea, the DIY, the do-it-yourself ethic. From day one, MacKaye and Nelson were all about building an independent scene from scratch. They wanted to control everything, their music, their message, their distribution, all through their label, Dischord. This wasn't just a business model, it was their entire philosophy. And man, did they explode onto the DC scene. The band's first shows, like this one you see here at the Wilson Center, they were just raw, pure energy. They became legendary, basically overnight. They were at the forefront, helping to create this new, faster, more aggressive sound we now call hardcore punk. But here's the thing about Minor Threat. Their influence went way beyond just how they sounded. The ideas packed into their lyrics, well, those would ripple out for decades, a lot of the time in ways the band never, ever intended. And that brings us to maybe their most famous song, Straight Edge. You look at these lyrics and what you're hearing is MacKaye just writing about himself. It was a personal statement. He was explaining his choice not to drink or do drugs, pushing back against that whole self-destructive rock star cliche. But this right here is the crucial point, and it's kind of a warning, really. The band never ever set out to start a movement. That song was just one guy's personal thoughts. But thousands of kids heard it and took it as this strict set of rules, and that's what created the straight-edge subculture. It became this whole phenomenon that just took on a life of its own, totally separate from what the band meant. And look, that wasn't the only time their lyrics stirred things up. Their song Out of Step, with that famous line, "Don't smoke, don't drink, don't fuck," well, some people, even guys in the band, thought it came off as a little too preachy. Then there was Guilty of Being White, which led to people accusing them of being racist. MacKaye has always shot that down, saying it was actually an anti-racist song that came from his own experience of being bullied as a white kid in a mostly black high school. So to try and clear up what they meant with Out of Step, the band famously added this spoken word part to a later recording. And the story behind this is just brilliant. It shows you everything about their dynamic. That line, "This is not a set of rules," that wasn't written. It was just accidentally recorded by the engineer during a real live argument between MacKaye and the drummer Jeff Nelson about what the song was supposed to mean. How cool is that? Yet that kind of passion, that internal tension, that really defined their whole career. A career that, just like their music, was incredibly short, super fast, and really, really loud.
I mean, think about it. Just 3 years. That's it. From their first show at the end of 1980 to their last one in '83. It's almost hard to believe, given the massive shadow they cast.
And right here, this is the poster from that very last show. It's actually so perfect that they were sharing the stage with go-go and funk bands. It's a great little reminder that they were always part of this bigger DC music scene, not just some isolated punk band.
So why did they call it quits? Well, this quote from Brian Baker, who switched from bass to guitar, really nails it. He and Lyle Preslar were getting into more melodic stuff, like U2, and they wanted the band's sound to change. But Ian MacKaye, he had a different vision. For him, it wasn't just about the band. He was building a whole community with Dischord Records. They were just heading in different directions creatively.
But, the band breaking up was nowhere near the end of their story. In a lot of ways, it was really just the beginning of their influence. It kind of let their ideas spread out in all these different directions. I mean, just take a look at this. The members of Minor Threat, they went on to form or join some of the most important bands in the history of alternative music. You've got Ian MacKaye with the legendary Fugazi, Brian Baker joining the punk icons Bad Religion. I mean, their musical DNA is just everywhere. And that fight to protect their identity, it just kept going. Dischord Records became this gold standard for independent labels. They took on Fox Sports for using their music without asking. Eventually, they did license shirts to Urban Outfitters, but it wasn't some big cash out. It was a practical move to fight all the bootleggers. They even gave their blessing to a small hot sauce company. The point is, they always found a way to deal with the commercial world, but they always did it on their own terms. When all is said and done, critics have pretty much nailed it by calling them the definitive Washington, D.C. hardcore band. They took all that teenage rage and channeled it into these short, sharp sonic shocks. They found real art in keeping things simple and raw. They proved you didn't need a big budget or slick production to be powerful. Which really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The story of Minor Threat, from their DIY roots all the way to their showdown with Nike, it's really a masterclass in artistic integrity. It kind of makes you ask yourself, right? In a world that's just drowning in branding and commercialism, what does it actually mean, and what does it cost to truly stay, as they famously said, out of step with the world?